What's up, LeisureMartians? This is Rohit Raina. You're watching LeisureMartini, and today we are again going to do something RRR. Today I'm going to watch and react to the video by Patrick H Willems. The video is titled RRR, the biggest blockbuster you have never heard of. Now, this is a big YouTuber from, I imagine, America with 369,000 subscribers. So when this guy talks, there are a lot of people who listen. He mostly makes videos in Hollywood. There are videos on Batman, Fast and Furious, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Blade. So he mostly makes videos on big films that are known all over the world, not just in America. There are fans of all these movies in India as well as in all across the globe. So I thought this guy taking up RRR, talking about RRR, is quite a big deal because, like I said, this guy is right from the home of Hollywood. So let's see what this guy has to say. Without further ado, here we go.
Well, I've released my video about the best of 2021. The Oscars happened in a totally chill and unremarkable way, and so now, in April, it's finally time to talk about 2022. And you know what? It's been a pretty good year for movies so far. Everyone is rightfully going crazy for Everything Everywhere All at Once. After
I had to watch this film.
Michael Bay released his best movie in a decade. Channing Tatum finally returned after a 5-year absence.
Whoa,
Emo Batman rules. Soderbergh knocked another one out of the park.
Yeah.
We got an awesome Pixar movie.
I have
the
watched
first
most of
Adrian Lyne
these.
movie in 20 years, and it is fun as
Yeah,
hell.
that was
Plus,
Deep Water or
more
something.
romantic comedies. But I'm not here to talk about any of those movies, because out of all the good movies we've had so far this year, to me, one reigns supreme, delivering truly the best time I have had in a movie theater in years. And despite this movie being a massive international sensation and one of the biggest blockbusters of the 21st century, there is a good chance that you've never heard of it. The movie is called, and I promise this is literally the title, RRR, which stands for Rise, Roar, Revolt. There's actually more to the story of the title, but we'll get into that later. This is the new film from director S.S. Rajamouli, starring N.T. Ramarao Jr., Junior NTR for short, and Ram Charan. It is an Indian movie, but, and this part is very important, it is not a Bollywood movie.
It's not a Bollywood movie.
It's a 3-hour-long action musical historical epic, and folks, it is incredible.
He knows his shit.
3 times in theaters. I've dragged almost all my friends here in the city to see it. Last weekend, I spent half an hour shouting at my sister on the phone about how great it is. The soundtrack is all I listen to. I'm obsessed. While plenty of subtitled international films cross over to American audiences each year, whether they are awards contenders like The Worst Person in the World, or genre favorites like The Raid, it rarely seems to happen with Indian movies. We as Westerners tend to go, oh yeah, Indian movies are all those crazy long musicals, but we rarely actually watch them. And I will be the first to admit that I really do not have much experience with Indian cinema.
Nobody has, I guess.
Whether you do or not, RRR is something you should know about and watch for 2 reasons. 1, it is genuinely a major event in modern international cinema, and 2, it absolutely rules. Like, this movie goes so hard. It is so fucking good. If you are able to see it and you choose not to, you are actively making the choice to live a worse life. Let's talk about Indian cinema. Now, I will be the first to admit that I'm not exactly an expert. In fact, I barely knew anything about it until yesterday, because thankfully, my good friend Siddhant Adlaka is literally from India and agreed to co-write this video with me and explain.
Indian films were never only about musicals.
If you're on Twitter, especially American film Twitter, you may sometimes see people sharing clips of ridiculous over-the-top Indian action scenes with captions referring to them as Bollywood movies. But here's the thing. That's often not the case. You see, all Bollywood movies are Indian, but not all Indian movies are Bollywood. Bollywood is the name of the Hindi language studio industry based in Mumbai, formerly known as Bombay, which is how Bollywood got its name. In fact, Bollywood movies only account for about 1/5 of the nearly 2,000 Indian movies produced.
This guy has learned quite a bit in one day.
Bollywood was the Indian mainstream. And while other parts of India have always had movie industries in their own languages, like Bengali cinema and the works of Satyajit Ray, plus a few dozen other regional language industries that I'm not yet familiar with, Bollywood was what people in the rest of the world, people like me, generally saw as modern Indian cinema. And while it's still really huge in India, its dominance has kind of shifted in recent years, thanks to blockbusters in industries in the south of India, in languages like Tamil, Telugu, and Kannada. In the past decade, Rajamouli's Bahubali films became some of the biggest
This
Indian
was such an
films of all
epic shot in
time.
Bahubali.
And they were actually shot in both Tamil and Telugu simultaneously.
Right.
As in, they shot
Not my favorite film, but
twice
visually it's a
in each
masterpiece.
language. Since RRR is from the Telugu language industry, it is a Tollywood movie, which is not to
Right.
be confused with the Bengali film industry, which is also called Tollywood because it's based in a region called Tollygunj. India also has, buckle up, Mollywood, Hollywood, Collywood, Jollywood, Chollywood, and Sandalwood, but look, we don't have the time to get into all of that. The point is, in the last few years, Tollywood, the Telugu one, has emerged as the most financially successful Indian film industry. RRR has only been in theaters for a month, and it's already the second highest grossing film of all time in India, behind Rajamouli's Bahubali 2. And the third highest grossing Indian film worldwide. So, why don't we know that much about Tollywood? To be fair, we don't talk about Indian movies that much at all. And when we do, it's definitely not like the independent art house stuff, which Siddhanta assures me is great too. But you would think that even something as big as Bollywood, and now Tollywood, would be a little more on our day-to-day radar as people who like to watch and talk about movies.
It's not.
But hey, it's not too late to change that, and RRR is a great place to start.
I hope.
Now,
I
if
hope.
you only have a passive
I hope
knowledge of
RRR has
Bollywood
opened the
maybe
floodgates.
through the one Bollywood movie you saw in college, let me put it this way. Tollywood is like Bollywood, but more. The action is bigger, the musical numbers go way harder, and the stars are revered. At least as far as I can gather from the totally bonkers response to the RRR trailer being released in Indian theaters. Now let's see a Marvel movie top that. You might have experienced this yourself if you managed to watch RRR in a theater
was
full
insane.
of Telugu-speaking viewers like I did. And let me just say, after that experience, I really need to learn how to wolf whistle if I'm going to do that again. But also, what makes something like this unique for me as an American viewer is that I'm only used to these big vocal audience reactions happening with franchises like Marvel or Star Wars. RRR is not based on any existing IP. It's an original movie, but my opening night crowds cheered as soon as the main characters made their entrance, and then a whole bunch of times after that. And that's because in a lot of major Indian industries, the stars are the franchise, the way it used to be in Hollywood. Like, we all know Robert Downey Jr. is a huge movie star, but can you imagine people cheering when he shows up in, like, The Judge?
Yeah,
No,
that's
of course not.
very accurate.
But a big part of why audiences were so amped for RRR is because it brought together two of Tollywood's biggest stars, who, at least according to them, have never done a movie together before because no production could afford them both. During RRR's end credits musical number,
Still,
which,
they
by the
did,
way, is
finally.
spectacular and
In
something
Bollywood,
that
it does not
should
happen.
have, at one point, a middle-aged man shows up who was not actually in the movie itself, and my audience went nuts, whistling and cheering for this guy.
And you were
I looked
totally
it up
confused.
When I got home and discovered that that was the director, S.S. Rajamouli. People reacted to the director's cameo like he was Tobey Maguire showing up in No Way Home. Because remember, in the past decade, with his films
Oh, man.
Bahubali
He is
the beginning
big.
and Bahubali 2 the conclusion, This guy
I
has
mean,
become India's most popular filmmaker.
and he deserves to be.
really illustrate how
He
big a
deserves all
deal
this
these people are.
maddening
Let's talk about the title.
euphoria for him, Rajamouli.
RRR stands for Rise, Roar, Revolt in English, and a number of similar things in the many Indian languages it was released in. But
This is
those
the first time I'm
slogans
seeing
were
it.
all reverse engineered because RRR was actually the film's working title when it was announced back in 2018. It stood for Ram Charan, Ramarao Jr., and Rajamouli. Three names so huge.
I
and
had
powerful
heard
that they just decided
about
to
this
stick
thing,
with it
but I
and
never
make
knew
the
this
movie
was
after.
legit.
This is like
I think my wife told me this.
Was called Street Hanks Spielberg. Okay, so now that we've established why this movie is such a big deal, what is it actually about? Well, RRR is a historical epic set in 1920s British-controlled India about two real people who fought against colonial rule, Alluri Sitaram Raju and Komaram Bhim. Now, in reality, these men never met, but what this movie presupposes is maybe they did, and maybe they became best friends? Pretty much nothing in the movie is based on fact, except for the names of the two revolutionaries and a few other minor details. So this is basically historical fan fiction. But Rajamouli and his story writer, who happens to be his dad, decided it would be fun to write something set in the brief period of history where the two men's whereabouts were mostly unknown. It tells the story of two super strong, muscular hunks who become best friends without realizing they're on opposing sides, since Ram is working for the British and Bhim is fighting against them. This, of course, eventually leads to an explosive falling out. So it's kind of like the inevitable explosion
So we know
of
the
the
plot.
mega
So we're going
powers,
to-
Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yes.
I don't actually get that reference because I don't watch wrestling, but my co-writer told me to say it. Anyway, minor spoilers, but they finally realize they're on the same side
I think I'm
and
going
team
to
up to
skip
open a
part
can
of
of
it
whoop ass
from
on the British
11,
Empire. That was another wrestling
20.
reference, wasn't it? A bit over the top and hyperbolic. But the thing is, RRR is an over-the-top hyperbolic movie, and it invites
To
this kind of
12, 15.
response. Like I said earlier, Tollywood is like Bollywood, but more. Everything in this movie is cranked to 11. Wait, no, scratch that. 13. There is zero room for subtlety. Everything is as big and dramatic as it can possibly be. When Bhim and Ram become friends, they become the best friends in the world, and they hang out doing squats while sitting on each other's shoulders. They are the strongest men in the world. The
there's a
evil
call out
racist
to this.
villains are the most evil and the most racist. A musical number isn't just a regular song and dance. Here, it is a furious dance battle against colonialism that is so intense it shakes the earth. When one of the heroes is captured and publicly flogged, they beat him with a whip covered in metal spikes, and during this, he sings a song so inspiring that it leads the crowd to riot. Okay, let's back up. The movie itself begins with 3 chapters. In the first, we see a young Indian girl named Mali being taken from her village tribe by the evil British governor while her mother is beaten over the head with a tree branch.
That's the part 1 of this video. I'll be reacting to the rest of the video in the part 2. This is great. I mean, it's almost like revisiting RRR through a foreigner's through someone else's lens, someone who is totally new to our culture, who is almost like an alien to our culture, to our films. And I use the word culture very seriously here, because it's not just another Indian film. The film is very much rooted in Indian culture, in Indian religion. So it's so interesting to see someone who has never watched an Indian film before, at least not a film like this, or as he says, he has not watched Indian films. He has always stayed away from them because they are so-called musicals. That's what Americans think, as per him. We used to think that they are just musicals. I know, when did this myth start? Because Indian cinema was never just about musicals, but that's past. I'll talk about it later in the video. So yeah, I really look forward to watching the rest of the video. So stay tuned.